I was 34 and 2 weeks away from marrying Kelsey, a woman I thought I knew inside and out. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for almost one, and I had never doubted that she was the one. I'm not the emotional type. I don't cry at movies. I don't overshare. But when I met Kelsey, I caught myself doing both. She made me feel safe, heard, loved, and that was a big deal for someone like me who'd spent the better part of his 20s putting up walls after losing the most important person in his life. My mom. My mom, Lorraine Cole, was the kind of woman who left behind a trail of gratitude and casseroles. She raised me on her own, worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, and still found time to run a free tutoring program at the library for kids in the neighborhood. She died suddenly. Aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye. Just a phone call at 6:03 a.m. and silence after that. I was 28, and I never got to introduce her to Kelsey, but I talked about her constantly. Her laugh, her work ethic, the things she taught me about resilience and honesty. Kelsey always listened. She didn't always seem moved by the stories, but I figured she just wasn't sentimental. Not everyone is. I didn't realize until much later that it wasn't sentimentality she lacked, it was respect. The first red flag should have been the first time she met my Aunt Joanne. We were 3 months in, and Joanne brought out a photo album, old pictures of my mom holding me at various milestones. Kelsey had smiled politely, then made a face when Joanne went to the kitchen. "Your mum wore that to your graduation," she said, holding up a photo like it was a punchline. "That's bold." I let it slide. Thought maybe she didn't mean it that way. But those comments never really stopped. Subtle jabs, little jokes, shrugs when I mentioned Mum's volunteer work, and then came the whispers about the wedding. Her parents' whispers. Her dad, Gregory, a regional bank VP who thought he was the reincarnation of Warren Buffett, once said at a wine tasting, "Well, Kelsey certainly picked someone with character. No legacy, but solid values." Her mom, Diane, chimed in, "I'm sure Brandon's mother did the best she could under the circumstances." The circumstances. That's how they describe my mom's life. Single, poor, tired, and dead. I was furious. I should have walked then. But love makes you stupid. And I was in deep. We'd already booked the venue, sent out the invites, locked in the band. I kept thinking, just survive the wedding and things will normalize. Big mistake. A week before the wedding, Gregory and Diane offered to throw a private cocktail party for the elite guests, mostly her father's colleagues and old money friends from upstate. I didn't love the idea. Kelsey assured me it would be small, tasteful, just a polished pre-wedding celebration. I agreed, against my better judgment. The party was held at the Ridgemont Club, a ridiculously exclusive members-only estate with enough marble and gold leaf to give Versailles a run for its money. When we arrived, I immediately felt out of place. Everyone was in designer everything. I was wearing my best blazer, but I could still feel their eyes scanning the label. Gregory greeted me with a half smile and a glass of something expensive. "Don't be shy, Brandon," he said, patting my back. "You've made it to the big leagues now." Kelsey laughed. "Dad." But not in a way that corrected him, in a way that agreed. I made small talk. I shook hands. I counted down minutes in my head, and then Gregory tapped a glass with his ring. "I'd like to say a few words," he said. I froze. Public speeches weren't part of the plan, but it was his venue, his crowd, his ego. I listened, arms crossed, as he told a charming story about Kelsey's high school debate triumph, then her college internship at some top-tier firm. He praised her work ethic, her taste, her future. And of course, he added, her ability to uplift others, like Brandon, for example. The room chuckled. I forced a smile. "No offense, son," Gregory continued, "but you come from modest roots." Nothing wrong with that. Kelsey saw the potential, and here we are. Shows how sharp her instincts are. I gripped my glass tighter. Diane took over next. "Brandon's a lovely young man, polite, steady, practical." She looked right at me. "Your mother must have worked very hard. It shows. I just hope she'll be with us in spirit next week." I tried to stay calm, and then she said it. We'll leave a seat for her, maybe with one of those angel candles. People do that, don't they? Another laugh rippled through the room. Kelsey didn't stop them. She didn't even flinch, just held her wine glass and smiled. That was the moment something cracked. I stood there hearing my mom's name tossed around like an inside joke by people who never met her, never knew what she sacrificed. And the woman I was about to marry said nothing. I excused myself, walked to the terrace, and stayed out there alone for almost 20 minutes. Kelsey came out eventually, half tipsy, laughing. What's wrong with you? It was just a toast. They mocked my mom. Oh, come on. You're being sensitive. She kissed my cheek and walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying every moment, every insult, every time I ignored the voice in my head telling me something was off. I was marrying into a family that saw my grief as comedy, and I was about to sign a document that tied me to them forever. Unless I didn't. Unless I flipped the script. I pulled out the prenup her family had demanded. Yes, they were the ones who insisted on it. To protect Kelsey's inheritance, Gregory had said. Standard practice. What they didn't realize was that I'd read every clause, every loophole, every line, and I'd added one. One that only required Kelsey's signature and a notary, a clause about what happens if the wedding is called off due to public misconduct. I called my lawyer the next morning. Activate Clause 19, I said, and let's talk timing. He paused. You're sure? Dead sure. Because they didn't just disrespect my mother, they disrespected me. And they were about to find out what a poor kid raised by a legend could do when pushed to the edge. 3 days later, I found myself sitting across from Gregory and Diane at a brunch Kelsey insisted on. To smooth things over, she said. It was hosted at their favorite French fusion spot, all marble accents and $22 eggs. They acted like nothing had happened, like they hadn't humiliated me in front of 50 people with backhanded jokes about my mother. Gregory sipped his espresso and gave me a patronizing nod. Everything good, Brandon? You've been quiet lately. Just thinking, I replied, watching him closely. I'd spent the last few days not sulking but preparing, printing documents, reviewing timing, getting all my financial ducks in a row. They didn't know I was about to call off the wedding and trigger a clause in the prenup that would force Kelsey's family to forfeit a good chunk of the wedding costs they'd already covered as part of their generosity clause. Gregory had insisted on that clause, said it would prevent cold feet games. He just didn't think he or his daughter could ever be the ones to violate it. The language was clear. If public conduct by either party or their family brought reputational harm before the marriage and the wedding was cancelled by the injured party, liability fell to the offending side. And Gregory's toast was recorded. So was Diane's, by the club's AV system, which I'd already subpoenaed via my attorney. Brandon, darling, don't be moody, Diane said, stirring her tea. We were just having fun at the party. People loved it. Some people, I muttered. What's that? Nothing. Kelsey smiled at me like I was a child who'd had a tantrum. You're overthinking again. Maybe. Or maybe I was thinking clearly for the first time in months. That evening, I met with my dad. He's a quiet man. Vietnam vet. Not much for drama. When I told him what happened, he just nodded and said, You have two choices. Be quiet and regret it, or speak up and live with peace. I knew what I had to do, but it wasn't enough to just cancel the wedding. They needed to understand what they'd done, what it cost them. I booked a reservation at the same Ridgemont Club for a family dinner, told them it was a rehearsal prep meal, sent invites to my closest friends, my sister, and a few key people from Kelsey's side who weren't complete snakes. Then I had my lawyer deliver the prenup revision summary, certified, directly to Gregory's office. The clause was highlighted in yellow. I timed the delivery for 10 a.m. sharp, 5 hours before dinner. He'd see it. He'd know what was coming. The club was buzzing when I walked in that night. Kelsey was radiant, like nothing was wrong. She leaned over and whispered, Only 1 week to go. I smiled. That's what I keep telling myself. I waited until everyone had eaten, until wine had flowed, until the air was warm with small talk and entitlement. Then I stood up. "If I could have everyone's attention," I said, "I'd like to say a few words." Kelsey looked confused. Gregory stiffened. Diane blinked rapidly. "I've been thinking a lot lately," I began, "about what it means to join a family. Not just the good parts, the dinners, the holidays, but the values you inherit, the respect, the history, and what happens when that respect is missing." My dad sat up straighter. My sister's eyes locked on mine. "Some of you were at the cocktail party a few nights ago. You heard the toasts. You laughed at the jokes." A few people shifted uncomfortably. "You might not have realized," I continued, "that those jokes were about a woman who gave her entire life to others, who raised me on her own, who died before she could see her son marry, and who deserved a hell of a lot more than to be mocked by people who never knew her." The room was silent now. "So tonight isn't a celebration," I said. "It's a correction." I turned to Kelsey. "You didn't defend me, or her. You laughed, and that told me everything I needed to know." Her mouth parted, but no words came. "This wedding is cancelled," I said. "Effective immediately." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Gregory stood up. "Brandon, don't be dramatic. We can talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I interrupted. "You disrespected my family. You mocked my mother's memory. You thought your money insulated you from consequences. But you forgot something." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a printed copy of the prenup summary. I walked over and dropped it in front of Gregory. "I didn't." He looked at the paper, and I watched the color drain from his face. "Clause 19, I said. Reputational harm, triggered by your behavior, which means the financial penalties fall on you, not me." Kelsey gasped. "You're weaponizing a prenup." "No," I said, stepping back. "I'm honoring it. You demanded it. You built this system. I'm just playing by your rules." Diane's face turned sheet white. "You'll ruin her reputation," she hissed. "She'll never recover." I looked straight at her. She should have thought about that before laughing at my mother. I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang, then added, "If you enjoy stories like this, where people stand up to betrayal, subscribe for more." I promise there's more where this came from. Then I turned to the guests. "Dinner's on Gregory. Enjoy the show." I walked out without another word. Kelsey followed me to the parking lot, heels clicking, her voice rising. "You can't do this. You'll regret it. We built a life together." I stopped, turned, and looked her dead in the eye. Number I built a life. You mocked it. Now watch it walk away. Then I got in my car and drove away, leaving behind a cancelled wedding, a stunned crowd, and a legacy defended. But I wasn't done yet. Because what they didn't know, what Gregory hadn't seen, was the email I sent that morning to the club's board of directors, with clips from the speech and an official complaint of misconduct. I wasn't just calling off a wedding, I was burning the house down. And when I was finished, there wouldn't be anything left but smoke. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 42 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, and a storm of emails. Some threatening, some begging, some just incoherent rage typed in all caps. Gregory's number, blocked. Diane's, blocked. Kelsey. I let her stew in read receipts. The last thing she'd sent was, "You've destroyed everything." To which I almost replied, "You started it." But I didn't. I was too busy watching it all collapse. By noon, the Ridgemont Club's legal counsel had responded to my complaint. The board had reviewed the recording. They agreed that Gregory's behavior violated member conduct guidelines, especially using the club's private venue to humiliate a deceased individual in a public setting. Result: his membership, suspended pending formal hearing, but the damage was done. The board was furious that he'd used their brand as a stage for a scandal. You can't buy your way out of everything, even with cufflinks that cost more than my car. But that wasn't the highlight. That came at 3:14 p.m. when my attorney sent me a forward. Gregory's bank had released a formal statement. We are currently evaluating our ongoing relationship with Mr. Gregory Langston in light of recent allegations. See, when you work in finance, especially regional finance, where trust is your whole brand, you can't afford to be a punchline, especially not in a viral clip labeled "Bank VP Humiliates Orphan Groom's Dead Mom." I didn't post it, but someone did. Someone at the Ridgemont Club leaked it, and it spread like wildfire. TikTok, Reddit, YouTube Shorts, millions of views in hours. Comment sections went feral. This man really said, "We'll leave a candle for your dead mom," and thought it was charming. The groom played it like Batman. Kelsey's silence said more than her vows ever would. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, pizza box beside me, and my mom's photo on the mantel. I wasn't smiling. Not really, just breathing for the first time in weeks. And then came the unexpected knock. I opened the door to find Kelsey standing there, mascara smudged, eyes glassy, holding a red envelope. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said. I leaned on the doorframe. Number. It wasn't. My dad lost everything. No, I corrected. He lost access to everything. That's not the same thing. She shoved the envelope toward me. I wanted to give this back. I took it, opened it. The necklace. My mother's. The one I'd given Kelsey to wear on the wedding day. Something old, something precious. She hadn't returned it after I called things off. Until now. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. I didn't realize how much you loved her." That hit. Hard. "She raised me alone," I said. "She gave up her whole life for me. And when I talked about her, I wasn't being sentimental. I was inviting you into my story." Kelsey looked down. I was scared of that story. Scared I didn't measure up. "You didn't have to measure up," I replied. "You just had to respect it." She didn't answer. Just nodded, turned, and walked away. I closed the door, and for the first time didn't wonder if she'd come back, because I didn't care. The next day, I visited my mum's grave, cleaned the headstone, placed a small bouquet, and said, "I kept my promise, Mum. I didn't let them rewrite you." But even as I said it, I felt something unresolved, something unfinished, because there was still one thing they had, one line they crossed that I hadn't forgiven. The fundraiser. Months earlier, when Kelsey's parents threw a gala to raise money for a local museum wing, they'd used my mum's story as part of their pitch. "We're funding this project to honor working-class heroes," Gregory had said, like the late Lorraine Cole, a single mother who believed in education and service. They'd raised over $300,000 that night, and donated none of it in her name. Not one plaque, not one mention. They used her story like a marketing ploy. That's when I knew what I had to do next. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. I contacted the foundation board, asked for a meeting. They were reluctant. Then I showed them the clip, the speech. The private toast turned viral. "You used my mother's name to raise money," I said. "And the people who spoke that night are the same people who mocked her memory in front of a crowd." Silence. Then one board member, a woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "You're right. And I'm sorry." They agreed to withdraw Gregory and Diane's names from the donor wall. The wing would still be built, but it would be dedicated to Lorraine Cole. Full plaque, full photo, full story. I left the meeting with tears in my eyes, but not the sad kind, the kind you get when justice has a name. 2 days later, Kelsey tried one last time. An email. Subject line. "One last conversation?" I didn't open it, just hovered over the trash icon, then clicked. I didn't need to hear her reasons. I'd seen all I needed to see. My story wasn't hers anymore. It was mine again, and it was finally being told the right way. I didn't think it would feel like this. I thought vengeance would roar, explode, burn. But instead it was quiet, clean, like shutting a door behind you in a house that no longer feels like home. I hadn't just ended a wedding. I'd ended an entire illusion. An illusion that love without respect was still love. An illusion that silence in the face of cruelty was neutrality. It wasn't. It was complicity. The media storm only grew. The clip of the toxic rehearsal toast made its way onto morning talk shows. One anchor called it the most savage non-wedding in recent memory. They praised my composure, my words, the prenup clause. Kelsey's name was everywhere. So were her parents. But I didn't speak to reporters. I let the silence say everything. My mother's photo was now on the main page of the museum's website. Underneath it, a quote she'd told me when I was 12. If you don't speak for yourself, someone else will write your story for you. For the first time, I realized she wasn't just teaching me how to stand up for myself. She was teaching me how to survive erasure. Gregorys bank officially terminated his position the following week. Incompatible with our public values, they said. Diane attempted a desperate PR move, an open letter apology to me, filled with passive voice and insincerity. It was never our intent. Regret any misunderstanding? No, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The world had already passed judgment, and I had already moved on. But I still had one last move. The locket. My mother's locket. The one I'd given to Kelsey. The one she returned only after everything fell apart. I had it cleaned, repaired, polished. And then, one clear Saturday, I visited the museum site. It was still under construction, but the plaque had already been placed. In honor of Lorraine Cole, educator, mother, builder of futures. I smiled, then reached into my pocket. I opened the locket, revealing the tiny black and white photo of her holding me as a baby, both of us squinting in the sun, and I pressed it into the concrete base beneath the plaque, embedded it, permanently. Let the city have its wing. Let the donors take credit. But my mother would live there now, quietly, invisibly, just like she lived her whole life, and they'd never be able to take that from her again. On the walk home, I stopped by the small coffee shop where I'd taken Kelsey on our first date. The same barista still worked there. She remembered me. "You okay?" she asked gently. "You looked better before." "I am better," I said. "Just cleaner now." I took my coffee to go and sat by the river, watched the light bounce off the water. I didn't feel bitter or angry or triumphant. I felt finished. People talk a lot about closure, about getting the last word, but sometimes the real win isn't what you say, it's what you refuse to carry. And I wasn't carrying them anymore. Not Kelsey, not Gregory, not Diane, just my mother, just her voice, her values, her fire. She didn't raise me to be rich or impressive. She raised me to be unshakable, and now I finally was. A few weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a check, $30,000. The memo line just said, repayment, from the Langstons. I never cashed it. I framed it, hung it right under the museum photo, because forgiveness isn't always letting someone off the hook. Sometimes it's making sure they never forget what they owed. One night I was walking through downtown when I saw someone watching a video on their phone. The familiar toast, the familiar room, my voice. I didn't interrupt, just walked past and smiled. My mom used to say, "Let the truth speak. It's louder than you think." She was right. They mocked her memory. I immortalized it. They tried to bury her story. I built it into a monument, and when they thought they had the last word, I smiled. Because the world was still listening to mine. If that story meant something to you, if you've ever lost someone and felt like they were being forgotten, don't let that happen. Speak. Burn the silence. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. Because this isn't the end. It's just the start of writing the truth. My name is Brandon Cole. I walked away from a wedding. I walked away from their empire. And I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. On my terms. With my name and my mother's fire. They had money. They had influence. But I had something better. I had her. And in the end, everything they built collapsed in 10 minutes. I never raised my voice. I just told the truth. And that was enough.